Welcome back, guys. You may be wondering why today's video title is Disassembling Overdrive and Gearbox, considering that it's freshly painted and ready to be fitted to the car. Yeah, me too. Tell you after the intro. Let's go and take a look.
Are you listening? Damn.
Right, so why on earth are we stripping to bits, rebuilt, freshly painted, I painted myself last summer, ready to be fitted to the car, Gearbox and Overdrive? Great question. Now, when I was painting it back in the summer, I noticed a little bit of oil in little places and I thought nothing of it. I thought maybe it's come out of somewhere that it shouldn't have done, it's all going to be fine. And the other week we propped it up on a couple of bits of wood. You may have seen it in previous videos, up on the bench over there, and it's got no oil in it, not a drop, but it has been rebuilt, so all it's got in it is assembly oil. However, it's still leaking, and I spoke to a specialist the other day and he said, James, they leak for a pastime. The only time they stop leaking is when they got no oil in them, and this hasn't got oil in it and it's already leaking. So when we put oil in it, it's going to be a lot worse. So to take a few steps sideways to go forward, we're going to strip the overdrive off the sandwich plate off the gearbox, and replace mainly the gasket between the sandwich plate and the box, which is leaking. Because as you know, guys, there's only one way to do things, and that is to do it right. So let's get it up, bellows and down, facing up in the air, take some bolts out, and then I'll show you what's inside. Right, let's get this overdrive removed from the sandwich plate. Now before we go any further, I'd just like to stress that this wasn't rebuilt by us. We're not undoing our leaks, we're undoing someone else's leaks. I don't want you to think that we're not working to the standard we normally do. So let's get some bolts out and then pop this overdrive off. We need to remove this short bolt, this short bolt, this short bolt, and this short bolt, which leaves you with this long bolt and this long bolt. Got 8 springs inside, so this is under spring tension onto the sandwich plate. When you remove the 4 bolts, you can then undo these 2 slowly and equally, and the pressure of the springs will push the overdrive up, and then you release them, and then you can just simply lift the overdrive off. But that's not even leaking, but never mind, we've got to get that apart to get down to sandwich plate level. Right, that's those 4 nuts removed, and I've just started to back off the 2 longer studs. It was stuck, so I just give it a little tap with a mallet, which just pushed the springs off the gasket, and now we're going to gradually wind them off to the end, and then the overdrive should just lift off the job. Hey, there she goes. So now it's just a case of lifting the overdrive off, and then we can hopefully get in to have a look at that sandwich plate. Of course all the springs fell out. Oh dear. Now, I'm sure these springs aren't specific to each post, but it's very obvious that the 4 shorter ones are inboard and then the 4 longer ones are outboard. But if Dad was here, he would be labelling them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, putting them in pairs, laying them out. So I'll do the same. There we go, there's our shaft with our cam on it. Now I've been informed we need a few special tools and a little bit of voodoo and jiggery pokery to put it all back together. I've heard talk of the overdrive going in the vise and things like that, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. we'll cross that bridge. Now it should just be a case of removing this ring of nuts and then simply remove the sandwich plate. In your own time, sir. Beautiful. This is what was leaking. Now whether it's leaking and tracking around, I don't know. The only issue I've found is when it started leaking, when I found it a couple of weeks ago, a lot of these weren't the tightest, so I've nipped them up, but I believe that the oil has already got through and soaked into the gasket. So we'll peel it off and then double check with a straight edge that we've got no discrepancies in the sealing face on either the sandwich plate or the box, and get it lovely and clean and put it all back together, I suppose. Everything tells a story, doesn't it? The scraper is picking up on burred edges on this aluminium casting around here, which would have been holding the gasket off, and also when I painted the gearbox, the paint has managed to get underneath the gasket, and also up on top of the gearbox the paint has also got underneath the gasket. Now I'd like to argue that if that gasket was oil tight, there's no way in the world that that paint would have been able to get underneath that gasket. I mean that's taken us half an hour to disassemble, and now we're going to do a quick clean down, clean up the edges on there, brand new gasket, little bit of weld seal, some new nuts and spring washers, clean up these threads because someone filled them up with paint. Oops, that would be me. And then sandwich plate can go back on. I mean, for the sake of less than an hour's work, we've potentially stopped a horrible looking oil leak, which would have let the car down a little bit, I say. Right, adapter plate cleaned, all the edges have been taken down nicely and it's lovely and flat. Same with the top of the box, all cleaned, all flat and lovely. We've got a straight edge across the top and we're golden, we're good. Nothing is holding that gasket off now. Threads are nice and clean now, face is clean. Little bit of weld seal on the gasket, new gasket on, adapter plate on, new nuts and washers, nip it all up, job done. Top tip, before you get covered in sticky horrible weld seal, make sure your gasket fits. We've all been there, and popping this on top to find out that it just about fits, but not well enough, so it needs modifying, saves a very sticky horrible mess. Let's get our hands wiped off and modify our gasket. How unusual. Nice and simple, just notched two of the holes out with a punch, dead straightforward, and now we are good to go, so we can weld seal and then stick it on. That's our gasket on. It's now simply a case of popping the sandwich plate on top, not forgetting our short nuts over this side, nuts and washers, tighten it up, job done. Now quickly before we finish off for this week, I did tighten these bolts up as they were a little bit loose when the box was over on the bench, and there was a little bit of oil on the bottom of the gasket, and since I've tightened it up it's been dry. But we've got a gasket set, so it's one of those that's worth doing right, because if you put it back in the car and it leaks from here as opposed to leaking from here, now we fix this bit, hopefully, then we're only going to kick ourselves, because this gasket was replaced when the bell housing came off for a little bit of machining work. So let's quickly whip this one off, have a look inside, clean it up, new gasket, well sealed, tighten it up, job done, peace of mind and relax. For the purpose of remembering, we're going to start with the one that sticks out the most as number 1, and then we're going to work our way round clockwise, and then we're going to lay them out on the bench just in case they're different sizes. Well, they're all the same size apart from one, but it's the right way to do it just in case. So there we go, and that's all we got time for this week. I was going to go into depth of refitting the overdrive, but as I say, there's a little bit of a technique and there's quite a lot to that. There's quite a lot of process you've got to follow to get it done. So I'm going to put it into a separate video for next week, so it makes it easier for people to find instead of having to sift through this video to find the specific overdrive bit. When will that video be posted? Come on guys, you know you've got to subscribe to find out. As always, have a wonderful week, and I will see you soon. Stay tuned.